share my screen. All right, can everybody see that there? Awesome. So we did a couple reports over the last couple years in partnership actually with ASU, the William Seidman Research Institute. This was the one that we did in 2018, and it took a look at the economic and social impact of nonprofits. So first of all, this sometimes is surprising to folks to see how many nonprofits there are in the state of Arizona. We have any year between 22 to 23,000 nonprofits. I heard some of you are from Southern Arizona, so obviously there are quite a bit in Pima County, and then of course no surprise that there's a lot here in Maricopa County as well, given that that's where a lot of the nonprofits are headquartered, but some of them might be in Maricopa and they're actually providing services throughout all of Arizona. And this would be something I'd be happy to share with you all afterwards if you wanted to utilize it, or the report itself that you can find online. This kind of gives you a breakdown of what types of organizations could be included in those 22,000. Obviously, no surprise, we have a lot of human services, which Tori and Kate, I think you both kind of crossed over into, and then also probably some youth services would fall in there as well. But we've also got public and social benefit, of course, arts and culture, which you're probably very familiar with. But some things people don't think about is our hospitals and our higher education are also considered nonprofits. So when you think about entering a career in the nonprofit sector, there are quite a few subject matter areas that you could enter into, and we have a great variety of those here in Arizona. Something to think about when you think about our economic impact of the nonprofit sector is that we have both a direct impact, the people we hire, the money that we spend, but we also have this indirect factor that we looked at. For instance, because I'm able to hire Susie or whoever, she then can spend that money in the economy. She may also have a side business that she can then support. So there's this indirect factor that also is generated by the nonprofit sector. So what we look like here in the state, we actually employ directly 171,000 Arizonans. We are the 5th largest non-government employer as a sector, so really significant. And then when you think about that indirect, we also are responsible for an additional 160,000 jobs because of the money that we're generating here in the economy. We pay $8.3 billion in wages. That's a number probably you're not used to seeing associated with a nonprofit sector, but we definitely do pay our employees. We're not all volunteer. That sometimes can be a misconception there. And then indirectly, we also are generating more jobs, maybe from our vendors, our suppliers that we're paying. And then our gross state product is 10.9 billion directly. So we are generating a lot of revenue. We may earn our revenue through donations or fundraisers, but we also have a lot of earned revenue. People pay money to go see shows at the theater. They pay tuition. They pay for health and human services. Maybe it's a copay. We even have things like homeless shelters or human service organizations that have thrift stores, that have catering businesses that they use not only to train people that are going through their programs, but also to generate revenue to support their services. And then this last one is really interesting. We also do have taxes that the nonprofit sector pays. While some charitable organizations may be exempt from sales tax, we still pay payroll taxes. There's still other taxes that we're paying that go into our state and local governments to support the communities as well. So about 1.2 billion directly, and then another 1 billion generated by our indirect. So when you think about it as percentages of the total Arizona economy, nearly 8% of the gross state product is generated by nonprofits. Nearly 12% of all jobs in Arizona from nonprofit organizations. We pay nearly 11% in wages and about 9% in taxes. So a good portion that sometimes folks don't realize comes from the nonprofit sector. Something I like to do is compare that. So is that good? Is that bad? How does that compare to other industries that we do hear a lot about? So I mentioned 5th largest non-government employer. This direct impact, so there's 22,000 nonprofits in Arizona, but if you narrow that down to organizations that have at least one paid employee, you're actually looking at only about 2,800. So that tells me two things. One, this impact that we're talking about is just a fraction, right, of the overall nonprofit sector. But then also we know a ton of work is done by volunteers. And that's a whole nother subject that we could talk about, which is obviously not our focus today. But of those 2,800 nonprofits that employ someone, we actually have 37,000 more direct jobs than the construction industry in Arizona. And we directly pay more wages than the construction sector, accommodation and food services and wholesale trade. So when you think about tourism, hospitality, construction, the nonprofit sector is right in there in terms of employees and wages. And we're the 8th biggest direct contributor to our gross state product. So you can find all that information and a lot more really interesting things that might help you as you bring this into your classrooms. It's at aznonprofitvalue.org. This is the website. And you can actually find the first report from 2016 and then this more updated report from 2018, which actually goes into a lot more than just economic impact. So I wanted to make sure, like I said, we just started off on a foundation of kind of understanding the sector as it is. And I'll make sure I send this over so you guys can have a copy of that as well. All right, a lot of data, right? Early in the morning. So now we'll get into the really great part of hearing from two amazing leaders. I have the privilege of serving on our Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits board, and I'm going to let them go ahead and kick things off to tell you, about their experience, their background, maybe how they got to where they are, but then also them being CEOs of larger nonprofit organizations, maybe also sharing what are they looking for in potential team members or potentially some of the positions that they're hiring for and what skills they're looking for. So Tori and Kate, thank you so much for being on the call with me today, and I'll let you guys fight it out for who would like to go first.
Kate, you're on mute.
Whoever unmutes first, right?
First, learn how to use an iPad. There. Well, thank you all for inviting us. When Kristen put the word out, I was delighted to join. I come from a whole family of teachers. I'm the only one that didn't go into the family business. So I feel like I found my way to public service in a different way. What I'd like to do is to share a little bit about my career path. It was not a straight line from here to there, and that may help you as you guide your students. And I also then would like to share what I think are some of the joys of working in nonprofit and some of the misperceptions. So I actually grew up in Tucson, and I started my career here working in advertising and public relations. I actually went to school in Los Angeles and then moved to San Francisco and worked for a couple of big ad agencies there. And, I was young and it was a lot of fun. And then I moved back to Tucson and worked for a couple of agencies. That work started to get old, and part of it looking back now reminds me that, when you're just, for me, when you're just working to make more money for a client, at some point that wasn't very satisfying to me. And I realized kind of early on that I'm at my best when I have a cause. And there were lots of opportunities working for ad agencies where we had pro bono clients or projects that were related to healthcare that were much more satisfying to me than working on campaigns for new cars or new houses. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It just got to the point where it just was not something I really wanted to do. So I was able to land a job at the U of A, which honestly was a fantastic transition. I felt at the U of A like I was working for the world's best client because there's so much good work going on at every university. So many interesting people, so many smart, committed people. And I really found my groove there. I was there for about 20 years. I ended up running the marketing department for the whole university, which was really fun and challenging and all that. In that process, finished a master's in public health, which I loved. And I was always hoping for an opportunity to marry my expertise in marketing communications and my interest in public health. I didn't really find it until about 4 years ago. And I I left the university, was working for a hospital in marketing and business development, and this job opened up at Ronald McDonald House Charities, and I couldn't believe it. I just thought, oh, this is my dream job. And I looked at the job description. I sat down with some really smart friends and said, what do you think? You know, it was one of those things where I wasn't perfectly qualified for it, but I really wanted the job. And I thought that all of my skills, my background in marketing communications, my experience in the community, my experience in public health, I thought, you know what, I'm going to package this and I want this job. So I didn't start working in nonprofit leadership until I was 60. And I really just only wish that I had landed in this place earlier. It is just such a great experience. One of the things that I think, especially younger people, when you're talking to your students, sometimes think that working in nonprofit is so different than working for a for-profit. And in some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. The thing that's lovely to me about it is that when you're working for a business, even if it's a really fabulous business, and it's a business that's committed to the community, is giving back in all sorts of ways, the bottom line is always the bottom line. And you're looking at what can we do to make more money. Working for a nonprofit, you're looking at what can we do to serve more people? How can we serve our community better? And it's kind of a different mindset. And it really is a nice way to spend your life. Sometimes people think that nonprofits don't pay very well. And that really isn't true. It really isn't true across the board. You know, I have an HR professional who's on my board. And when I started the job 4 years ago, we level set. And she, you know, we looked around the state and tried to figure out, okay, you're doing IT here for the Ronald McDonald House. What would you be paid if you were doing this someplace else? I wouldn't say that we're at the top of the pay scale, but we are right in there. And so I think that sometimes young people think, oh, if you go into nonprofit work, you don't make any money. That really isn't true. The other thing is that I think, and I probably would have thought this when I was in high school, that you only go into nonprofit work if you want to be a social worker or that kind of. There's every job imaginable. But I have a small organization. There are 10 of us, but I have an accounting professional, I have fundraising professionals, I have facilities people, I have a volunteer manager, I have program people. So, I mean, the kinds of jobs you can find anywhere, really, you can find working for a nonprofit. The last 2 accounting managers who worked for me, fortunately I've only had 2, have always worked in nonprofit. And, you know, maybe they could make more money working someplace else, but they love working for a nonprofit. The skill set is the same, but the mission is different. The woman who works for me now used to work for the Arizona Theater Company, and working for the Ronald McDonald House, she feels so much more invested in the organization. She's not an accountant stuck away in an office just sort of, you know, managing the money. She's part of the mission. So I think there's just so many opportunities in nonprofit, and if there's anything we could do to encourage your students to look at nonprofit work, we'd love to. We almost always have a intern from the U of A. We're closely aligned with one of the sororities, which has a bazillion young women, and so we almost always have a volunteer intern. We like to create opportunities for young people, and there have been some. We had a young woman working for us last year who was a work study student assisting our accounting manager, and working inside a nonprofit changed what she wants to do with her career. So when she finished her master's, she chose a different kind of an accounting firm that does work with nonprofits. So, you know, that's what I have to share. And if there are any questions, maybe we should let Tori chat. And then if you have questions for us, that's why we're here.
Thank you so much, Kate. Catherine, do you go by Catherine or do you go by Kate as well?
Hi, Catherine.
Catherine. Okay, awesome. We have a lot of Catherines, a lot of Kates, a lot of Jennifers. So I always ask Jen or Jennifer. Do you want to do any questions now, or do we want to just go forward with Tori?
Do you guys have any questions? That we can definitely jump in with Tori, and please feel free to type in questions in the chat as well.
Great. Well, thank you, Kate. It was fun listening to you and your journey of where you landed. And I guess I'd just like to start by saying, you know, I kind of have always known that I would work in the nonprofit field. And I think it started when I was about 14 years old. I went on a youth mission trip. I was born and raised in South Dakota, and my church group went to New Mexico. So I went on this bus to New Mexico and we served. And I felt so good about volunteering, and at that time, just being able to help others. And I really had my eyes open. Went to college, decided to make a difference. I didn't know what that was, if it was with youth, if it was with seniors, and started volunteering. And so I was one of those that Kristen was talking about, all those volunteers. I was one of those. And after I graduated with a degree, I got my first job, and it was an entry-level job in the nonprofit sector, which didn't pay very much. I mean, way back when, and I'm talking about 1991, so it's been a long time, started entry-level salary, which is just unfair in the nonprofit sector. It was very, very low. Today, we try and do better. And I really loved what you said, Kate, about how it is a career where you can pay your bills. And I think that we are coming along. So I have always done this work. And even though when I started, it was really low, I make a really, really good salary as a CEO today. And 28 years into this, I'm trying to help change that about the nonprofit sector. You've got the three sectors, and we are the third sector in the nonprofits, but you can make a wonderful living. And I think the leaders of tomorrow can help change that, just like anyone who can make a difference. So we are paying market rate for a lot of the positions that we have. Entry level, people have to get in and kind of do the work for a couple years before that can happen, but it is a great opportunity. And for me, I love my job. There's never a day. Of course, there are hard days when you're working with difficult situations, whether it's children or families, and you hear about the stories, but there's never a day that I don't go home and know that I did my very best to help others. And it's not just the people we're serving. So for me, I'm a teacher also. I teach at ASU. I teach a semester-long course, Nonprofit Leadership and Management, and then I teach fundraising for Sanford and some of the other schools out there. So for me, I feel like being in the nonprofit sector, it's my opportunity to mentor others, to serve others, not just the organization that I work for, but it's to teach others how to give back, how to do meaningful work, and be able to be a productive citizen and make a living. And so for me, I've always done this work. I knew that I had to do this work. I needed to do something that was very meaningful and impactful. And I need to, I'm just driven by the ability to make a difference in the community and make life easier and better for those maybe who are less fortunate than I am. So that's kind of my career path. And when I started a long time ago, it was entry level after being a volunteer at that organization. I stayed 24 years at the same organization. When I started at that organization, there were less than 100 employees, and we were very small. And then when I left, we had decided to grow the organization, and we had 350 employees when I left, and we were, $25 million for an annual operating budget. So today at Child Crisis Arizona, we have 250 employees. We have a $20 million budget. We have multiple residential homes that serve children. But I truly believe that the key to the future of preventing child abuse and neglect is education and prevention. And so really where our focus is, people think we just do shelters, we just do group homes, we just help children in crisis. Yes, it's a big part of what we do, but what I've been able to change the last 5 years is we are focusing on something we call prevention. And so that's the biggest part of our budget right now. It's out there preventing. We've started all these early education classrooms for kids who are 100% to 200% below the poverty level. And we're inviting them into our classrooms every day. We're providing food, we're providing classes for their parents, and we are trying to prevent something from happening in the future. And so we are trying to prevent child abuse and neglect. And it's just an incredible opportunity for me to employ educators. You have to have a college degree to teach in our early Head Start classrooms. So that's a way that a lot of individuals can support. So we have teachers, we have nurses, we have nurse practitioners at Child Crisis Arizona. So it's not just low-paying jobs that you think about for the nonprofit sector. We have a very robust IT department like Kate. So there are so many different opportunities in nonprofits. I want you all to, just know that and think differently. It's not just volunteering at a soup kitchen. While that's important work and we all do that, there's so much more that we can do in the nonprofit sector. And it's not just about volunteers. It's about recruiting the best team, paying them market rates, and moving the whole nonprofit sector. I really, truly feel it's part of my job and leadership's job is to change the idea that working for a nonprofit, the traditional approach was this scarcity mindset. Oh, we have to accept every donation. Oh, we need to do this. Beggars can't be choosers. We have to beg for everything. So what we're trying to do in the nonprofit sector is to change the whole thought, turn it upside down. Let's not just do intervention services anymore. Let's prevent. Let's make a difference. Let's have true impact. Let's pay decent wages. And let's, most importantly, change our mindset that we are not, going to have this scarcity approach. We are changing to this abundance theory. And so really that's a little bit what I wanted to share today, but I'm happy to answer any questions. I just wanted you all to think a little bit differently about the scarcity approach. And like Kristen said, the stats, when you look at 22,000 nonprofits, we don't need that many. We need strong nonprofits that pay well, and they're not just filling a gap, they're preventing it and having true impact for the future. That's how we need to think about nonprofits. So with that, Kristen, I don't know if any of you want to ask questions to either one of us or have specifics you'd like to ask us.
Yeah, it looks like we did have one question in the chat that maybe either one of you could answer. Can you offer examples of the types of careers affiliated with nonprofit organizations that we can share with our students? And I know both of you kind of touched a little bit on there, but if you wanted to offer more examples, that would be great.
Is it possible maybe shows the website and kind of like, so we can learn how to navigate that website and find out where the resources that we can go to?
Yeah, in fact, I'll start. I think this might be a good one for just the broad Arizona community right now. Let me go ahead and share. We do have a job board actually on the Alliance's website. So let me show you that. This is where I send a lot of folks who are wondering, especially those that I mentor that are wondering about careers in the nonprofit sector. And they're always surprised to see the variety, like Kate said, accountants, CPAs, business strategic folks that happen to just have a passion and work for the nonprofit sector. So this is the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits website. So it's just arizonanonprofits.org. And right over here is the Career Center. So you can take a peek at that. ASU Lodestar Center for Philanthropy also has a job board that's really fantastic. So we always point folks to both of those sites. My internet at home is being a little bit testy. I think everyone's home internet is being testy. And so on here, you can search for, you know, a keyword, obviously your location, but you can search by geographic location. You could search by type of position. So like Tori and Kate said, you know, there's everything from the CEO level of small or large organizations. In the nonprofit sector, you'll also see the term executive director, which in our sector means the top leadership. So like a CEO, president, CEO, but a lot of times they're called executive directors. And this is something really important to us that I'm really excited. I don't think Tori and Kate even know. For us, as a matter of equity and inclusion, having salaries posted with job descriptions is super important to transparency, even if it's no matter what type of job it is. We feel that that is a step in the right direction. And so we just got approval from our job board that we now are mandating that any positions do have a salary range posted. So we're super excited about that. We think that's a step in the right direction. Thanks, Hortensio, I appreciate that. So you will start to see that. So for example, here's a president and CEO job at Ability 360, which is a huge organization. And so they've got the salary range right there. So you can see that's probably not one you normally think of for the nonprofit sector, but an incredible organization. They talk about the minimum education required, the minimum experience. So you can kind of really get an idea, and you can kind of scroll through here. And then you've got something on the total opposite spectrum, a grants writer, right? Which is something you probably really associate with the nonprofit sector. So you can, this is free and public for anybody to utilize. So feel free to tool around in that. And I'm happy to show you more examples if you'd like. But then, you know, Tori and Kate, you can also chime in, of course, too.
I love what Kristen just shared with you all, is that we want to be transparent in our sector, and it is really important for us to include the salary range so that people understand. You have the traditionalists from the nonprofit sector that think, no, people need to work for free, it's nonprofit. And to that, you know, Kristen and Kate and I would say, why? Why would you want to do that? We all are doing important work, just like teachers are doing important work. This is very valuable to society. Society would not be able to be productive and as enriched without the nonprofit sector or teachers or nurses. And so we do deserve to talk about what the salary is. And so we want to be transparent so that we can, like I said, continue. It is our job working in the nonprofit sector to lift up others and to lift up this sector and to make sure that people understand how important it truly is, and that you should have a market-driven salary by working in this sector. So I think that's great, Kristen, that the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits is, you know, has decided to include and actually mandate that salary.
If I may ask, of, say, in general terms of all the monies donated, or the grant monies and other funds that come into nonprofits, on average, how much of that actually goes towards services and maybe not administrative or overhead costs? Because we've probably heard a lot of stories about some well-known national nonprofits where the CEO was making millions of dollars a year, and a lot of the funding was actually going to operations versus the actual services. So how do you combat that image, if there is one? I mean, that kind of an image.
That's a great question, Javier, and I'll try not to build my soapbox so high that I go out of the Zoom lens here. But Tori and Kate know that this is a big thing that the Alliance works on, because there is a lot of questions about that. And so, you know, obviously I will put this out there before I say anything, is that in any industry, right, in any sector, in any organization, there's the possibility for things to be abused and for bad apples to be a part of that. And so I'll just caveat what I'm going to say with that, that they're definitely, our sector is not, we have that too, right? But in general, I got asked this question quite a bit when I came into my job at the Alliance 5 years ago. I've always worked in the association sector, which is also part of the nonprofit sector. That's, another lane that you could go in. But when I moved over from serving a for-profit membership base, small businesses, and I moved into serving the nonprofit sector, I got asked a lot of the questions, Javier, that you just proposed. All these CEOs are making all this money, and they shouldn't be making that money, and only 10% should be going to overhead, et cetera. So I really had to dive in, and fully understand that to help answer those questions. And so with the caveat being aside, to Tori's point, for the issues that the nonprofit sector is trying to combat, things like homelessness, hunger, domestic violence, health, education, we really want to make sure we have the best of the best, and that we're paying market rate in partnership with our for-profit partners, that we attract and retain the best employees. And with a different revenue model, right, with donations and fundraising being normally a huge part of what we do, of course, we also want to balance that with transparency. So what I often talk to folks about is, when you have an example of an organization, is to first consider their service delivery model. So, whether they're direct service, providing services in the community, or they have different programs or things. So for example, a lot of times our number one cost, right, is human resources with any company, right? That's going to be your number one line item. And depending on how those employees, right, are providing service, that tends to be your biggest cost regardless. So like for an association, our overhead is going to look a lot different than Tori's, or hers is going to look a lot different than a theater or an arts and culture organization. So I think the most important thing is that we have leaders in place who are fulfilling the mission, who are making the decisions on how those donations are being spent and doing it in a transparent way. However, if an organization was multi-million, 100 million plus, and they had logistics. So I know a lot of folks bring up Goodwill, and there's questions about that one. That one tends to be the one in the news. But when you think about an operation like Goodwill that has retail, that has logistics, wholesale, it blew my mind the first time I took a tour actually with one of our members who at the time was leading Goodwill in Northern Arizona. I was blown away at all the things they did, not only, the employment services that they provide in the community, et cetera. So if we had a for-profit, same size, same level of operations, right? What would we pay the for-profit person that we felt we needed that level of person to lead an organization like that with thousands of employees, et cetera, and so forth. So when we're able to put it in those terms of comparison, the question could be asked, well, why would we pay a for-profit person this much to run an organization the same, and we're not willing to do that for the same level of talent and structure of organization for a nonprofit? So I think we should pay folks what they are worth and what we need for the organization. Again, balancing that with transparency and our ability to fulfill the mission. So Tori and Kate, I'd love for you to chime in too on that, being in those seats as well.
You bet. So Kristen, I don't know if you're able to get to the nonprofit overhead myth letter. That's what I wanted to talk about. So your question is a great question. And there is an actual letter, and here it is. And it is written by 3 different individuals, and it's talking about this overhead myth, because we used to have this rule where 30%, up to 30% could be used on admin and fundraising, but then 70% had to go towards the program. And this overhead myth letter is from the Better Business Bureau, GuideStar, and then Charity Navigators. And it asks donors and individuals to truly think about impact. And you get what you pay for. And you can't just look at those numbers, although there are many people who volunteer to be on funding panels from the cities, and they just don't understand that we are running huge companies. And somebody who's running a large company should be compensated as such. So they're asking people, please don't look at those things anymore. There is not some magic percent that you need to keep your admin and fundraising to, 30% of the overall budget. And so this letter has helped us. It's been out for several years. So this is a great resource. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is Dan Pallotta has a famous YouTube talk, and it talks about thinking about charities in a different way. Because in the past, you would have a nonprofit and people on very low salaries, and there were some studies done. And the people who had very low salaries, and they kept saying, 98% of everything that's raised goes towards programs. You probably don't have professional people running that organization. It's being run by volunteers in their spare time. And so if you truly want somebody who understands business and can think with their heart and their head and have the experience and the education, you're going to have to pay more. And so Dan Pallotta would be another great YouTube to watch. And I would recommend everybody watch that. It's great for students to watch that also.
And I put the link in for this page, and I'll also put the link in the chat for that video, because I agree, it's fantastic. And I'll also include one that's kind of comical from a movie. I think it's called, is it Monty Python? I have not seen the full movie, but it is a hysterical representation of the point that we're all trying to drive home. So I'll include that in the links too.
And Kristen, this is Kate. I just have a couple of more comments to add to that regarding the overhead myth. The way nonprofits receive revenue is very different, one nonprofit to the next. So there are some nonprofits, maybe Tori, yours works with a lot of government grants. An organization like the Ronald McDonald House, 90 to 95% of our funding comes from the community. It's all, we raise it all. So when you look at our budget and our staffing, some people would say, gee, you shouldn't have so many fundraisers, except if we didn't, we wouldn't have an organization, because that's the only way that we have enough money to meet our mission. The other thing to know about nonprofits is that we operate with a very high degree of accountability. So not dissimilar to a for-profit company, we all report to our boards. The boards review our finances monthly. Everything we do is published. It's all transparent. So if you were a private company, nobody knows how much you're paying people or how much you're spending. But we post all of that information, and it's good for the community to know. Our organizations, our nonprofits, are owned by the community. They aren't owned by some entity. They're part of the community, and so we all take every effort, make every effort we can to make sure that people understand the way we're raising money and the way we're spending money.
I just wanted to add something. My partner has a nonprofit, and I know other people have a nonprofit, and it is a struggle because they expect everything to be free as a nonprofit. And it's one of them is the tiny homes, which are building the homes for the homeless and veterans. And they're struggling, and I see that part where you're saying that if you don't pay your employees, then how are you able to move forward making, if it's a tiny homes or whatever it is. So I understand the stigma regarding the nonprofits, but I do appreciate that you guys are paying your employees, because I feel they're going to want to go, because we try to hire a nonprofit and they don't want to come because they have that mentality that you're volunteer and we're going to be struggling and so forth. And it is a struggle if you don't have that foundation to move up your nonprofit to wherever it is. So I really liked everything you guys said, and I'm hoping we'll pass this information to the students that there is a great avenue if you went towards the Nonprofit Alliance. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Another thing I might add is when the question comes to us, well, what percent of your budget or, is going towards admin or fundraising? I like to answer, and I would say 100% of every donation or every contract track that we receive goes towards fulfilling the mission and the vision of our organization. 100%. It shouldn't matter if it's a teacher in a classroom, an IT professional, a pediatrician, the CEO, our director of strategic initiatives, whose only job is to go and look for new business opportunities for us. The grant writer, the fundraiser, it doesn't matter. 100% of everybody who works at Child Crisis Arizona or whatever nonprofit, 100% of what they do needs to go towards fulfilling the mission and the vision. So when I looked at the question that Cynthia, that you posed, what are some of the top skills students should have to move into the nonprofit sector? Number one, the most important skill is you have to be in alignment with the mission and the vision of that organization. Healthcare, hunger, child welfare, homelessness, behavioral health. That is the first and most important thing that we look for in the nonprofit sector, because if you're not in alignment with what we're doing, you're not going to be impactful. You're not going to be helpful. And so we are scrutinized and we are very transparent about how much money we spend on all these different positions, and so we need to make sure that people who work at our organizations are 100% behind whatever that mission and vision is. So that would be the top skill, is the alignment. And then other than that, I think the skills would be, flexibility, adaptability. And then there's all those specific skills. But you have to be passionate about what you're doing in the nonprofit sector. Because if you're not, you're in the wrong field. You should be in corporate America or work for the government. But you have to be passionate, because we are not going to make an impact in our communities unless we are passionate. And that's one of the things we ask when we interview. We do behavioral interview skills and motivational interviewing. Why do you want to work here? And we present scenarios. And if they aren't motivated by making a true impact and making a difference, we don't want them. And so that's the difference. So that's probably the biggest skill. You have to be passionate about what you do and truly believe in it, because we don't want somebody to come in and then others will say, well, they're just getting a paycheck, right? That's going to hurt the nonprofit sector. We don't want people just getting a paycheck. We want people that truly want to make an impact and make a difference, whether it's with the tiny homes or whatever it is. So mission and vision alignment, number one thing that we think about.
That's great point, Terry. And you kind of got into the question Cynthia had, the top skills that you look for. And that's one of those almost intangible. You can't prove necessarily that you know how to do that like you can with typing or financial or, and it's like, how do you teach that, right? As a teacher, it's not the specific skill that you probably have a handbook that you can teach out from, but it is something that you can show. And that's what I tell a lot of board members too. And this is something also that you might think about is I always encourage young professionals to serve on a board. To understand what a board is, because especially if they're considering leadership in a nonprofit sector, having a board of directors that you report to is very different, right, than being a CEO in a for-profit. While they may have a board, it's a little bit different structured than a nonprofit. And so learning what it is to be a board member not only develops them as a professional and engages them in the community, but it also prepares them for nonprofit operations or potentially in their future actually reporting to a board. And there's a lot of boards that offer young professional boards that are a great way to get their foot in the door. Of course, they could also volunteer, but that board service is also something that differentiates and can really give them some good experience as well. Kate, anything to add as far as skill sets that you're looking for?
Well, just to reiterate that virtually every kind of job that someone would be interested you would find in a nonprofit. When I look at Ronald McDonald House Charities globally, there are people who are statisticians, there are program managers, there are people who are public health experts, there are digital marketing. It runs the gamut. And the real difference, as Tori points out, is just choosing an organization that you love the mission. You know, for me, I couldn't do this for an art museum because I like art, but it doesn't move me. It wouldn't make me feel great every day to raise money for an art museum. And so when you have students who have a real passion for horses or the environment, I mean, there is always a nonprofit path. And really any skill set is going to help them, but it's just identifying that passion.
Thank you. How has the pandemic changed your fundraising strategies, if any way? Has it actually opened new opportunities? Has it helped enhance your services?
Well, I can answer that. Like for everyone, it's been a pretty big challenge. Ronald McDonald House, we're part of an international organization. There are Ronald McDonald Houses in 45 countries around the world. We closed all of the houses in mid-March because of the pandemic and are slowly opening them. I have written a reinstatement plan that our global organization will be willing to look at when the cases in Arizona have declined for 14 days. We're clearly not there yet. You ask how it's changed our fundraising strategy. We've been very successful fundraisers. We feel like we have a good reputation in the community. We have a national reputation. I have really good people working for me. We have strong connections in the community. That said, this isn't going to be one of those banner years, and we just know that. I mean, everyone is struggling. Our corporate supporters are not doing as well as they used to. We're okay with that. When this organization has been in Tucson almost 40 years, and we've been very stable, and so we could have a year where we don't knock it out of the park, and that's what we're looking for. We have found that the people who've supported us in the past are supporting us still, maybe not to the same degree, but we're not in panic mode. Tori, like you, I operate from a place of abundance and feel like this is all going to work out. It's tough for everyone, and we'll see our way through it.
That's wonderful. I'd like to even piggyback on what you said, Kate. The question is great, Javier. And this kind of goes back to, we need to run a business. And as business leaders, even in your own lives, looking at your own households, you all have budgets. And I think everybody nowadays understands you need 90 days of savings in the bank. You need a line of credit. You need a credit card. You gotta have some plan, right? And when you're running an organization, for as many staff that we have, for as many children that we're serving, we had to have 90 days cash on hand. I would say it's very irresponsible for any nonprofit today to not have a goal of having 3 months of savings, like you do for your bank account. Anyone loses their job, they need food, you need to pay the rent. I am responsible for 250 people, making sure that they can continue to get paid. I am responsible to make sure all those children in foster homes or in our group home or residential treatment center can continue to get service. We are not responsible as a sector if we don't have that 90-day goal. Now, are we all there yet? No, but we're all working on it. And so that's the challenge for us to think scarcity approach to abundance. So for those of us who fundraising is hard right now, people are not sure if they want to give as much. People are not sure if they're going to lose their jobs. How much money do they have? They're working in that 90-day cushion that they had. So I think for Kate, who relies on, a huge percentage of her budget, most of it is fundraising. I'm a little bit more fortunate where only, 55% of my budget is fundraising. So I can go for at least 90 days, but are we fundraising? Yes, we have to. We have to pivot. So most of us have gone to virtual fundraisers and online tours. I just did one the hour before I came onto this call. We have a once a month tour program. A tour program typically before COVID was our board members and us as staff reaching out to the community members, asking them to come on site and take a 1-hour tour of our home to see what it is, to see our mission and our vision. We're not able to do that anymore, where people could come in and learn. So we have to do a virtual tour. And then after that tour, we're hopefully getting them to sign up for our big fundraiser event in October. That won't be in person. So I think fundraising is still happening, but we're having to be, you know, think about it differently and be creative. But again, for all those nonprofits struggling, you need to think, why are they struggling? Because they probably have a volunteer at the helm, or somebody who doesn't think like a business, somebody without the experience, without the education, running that nonprofit. And that's why we need nonprofit leaders who understand that this is truly running a business. And we have to, if we're serious about protecting whatever that area is, healthcare, children, homeless, we have to run these like businesses. It's with your head and your heart at the same time. So yeah, great question.
That's great, Tori. I know we just have a few minutes left, and I'm not sure if I'm transitioning to another teacher externship call, and I'm sure maybe some of you are as well. So Catherine, is there anything you'd like for us to wrap up with, or any final questions?
No, we can definitely share contact information or any additional information that you have for us to distribute. We can definitely do that. So with the different links that you shared today. So Kimberly and Casey will definitely gather all this and share all this information and slides and so forth with the team, and any additional contact information as well. I want to say thank you all for joining us today. We are going to start having people come in for the next meeting. But again, thank you so much to both of you guys for joining us today, Kristen as facilitating, and hopefully you guys got some great questions answered and responses, and thank you again for all of us joining this morning.
Thanks so much.
And honestly, thanks to all of you for everything you're doing in the community. This is a tough time for teachers, so blessings to you all.
Appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to you all too for what you do as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Keep up the great work.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. See you all tomorrow.
Catherine, should I just stay on?
Yes, you should stay on this one. This is Cindy. I'm going to facilitate the next session, and Catherine will close out and go on to her next thing for the day.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, Mesha. Good morning.
Good morning.
So Kristen, it'll be the same, same kind of scenario. I'll be admitting people for the next few minutes, and then just right at 11 or a minute or so after, I'll just kick off, introduce you briefly, and turn it straight over to you.
Okay, I see Myriah's there in the meeting waiting room. She's our second one too, so that's great. She's here.
Great, and I can give co-host access to the folks too.
Awesome. So Mesha, what I did in the first session is I just opened with some of the slides from the Nonprofit Impact Report, and then just kind of handed over to you and to Myriah. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi. That's what we did with
Myriah.
and Kate. It worked well. So I'll just open up Myriah with a few slides on kind of setting the foundation of the economic impact, and then I will hand it over to you two. So the last call was great.
I just realized that I was talking on mute there, so you probably saw my lips moving but didn't have any idea what I was saying, unless you're great lip readers. So I just wanted to share, I'm Cindy Irwin, Director of College and Career Pathways with the Center, and just sharing that we'll likely have about 5 or so teachers on this call. We have kept the cohorts really small for this experience, so there can be more interactivity with 32 employer experiences throughout the course of the week. So our teachers have gotten to travel between several experiences. And this will be recorded, and so teachers who were not able to attend this particular session because they may have been in another one will be able to view this session at a later time.
Great, thank you, Cynthia.
I'll give it just another minute or so before I start us off. Some of our teachers may have been coming from another session, so we may just have a couple more people joining. Okay, I will go ahead and kick us off today. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to thank our guests from Nonprofit Alliance of Arizona to be here today, as long as they're guests of honor. So I'll let Kristen introduce them in just a moment. But I want to welcome our teachers back to, this would be your last session of this teacher externship experience with an employer. And then I know we have a teacher wrap-up session tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to hearing from all of you. And just for our panel to know that we've had teachers from across Yuma, Tucson, and Phoenix involved in this externship. And on this line, we've got teachers from Tucson and from the Phoenix area, public schools, from a charter school in the Phoenix area, and from a community college. So we've really got a wide variety of locations, as well as content areas and levels too. So welcome everyone. And Kristen, I will turn it directly over to you. Kristen is the CEO of the Arizona Alliance of Nonprofits. So we're thrilled to have Kristen here to lead us today.
Great. Thanks so much, Cynthia. Good morning, everyone. I just want to say I really, truly appreciate all of you taking time to be on this call, especially given the state of education right now. Teachers always have a hard job, and right now I know there's so much uncertainty. So thank you for taking the time and for obviously everything that you do to educate here in Arizona. We appreciate that. So this morning, I thought I would just kick it off with a little bit of sharing of information about the nonprofit sector here in Arizona, because I know often when I share this information, it is a bit surprising. And so this is something that you'll have access to after this call as well, that you could share with your students to talk a little bit more about a sector that maybe they aren't often considering. And that was why we wanted the opportunity to participate in this amazing project was to showcase the nonprofit sector as definitely a wonderful option, not only for those that may think they're just going to go, right? And that's normally the path that a lot of folks take into the nonprofit sector, but to talk about the breadth and the variety of the nonprofit sector here in Arizona. So what I'm going to show you today is actually, we did 2 reports over the last few years to showcase the economic impact of the nonprofit sector and the social return on investment. Some of the things we don't normally talk about are things like revenue and jobs and wages. And so we wanted to take the opportunity to showcase that and kind of uncover some of the wonderful things that go beyond just the wonderful work we do in the community. So something a little bit surprising for a lot of folks is the number of nonprofits here in Arizona. We have nearly 23,000 nonprofits throughout the entire state. I know some of you are from Southern Arizona as well. And so in Pima County, there's about 17.4% of all the nonprofits. No surprise that the good majority of them are here in Maricopa, just based on the population and the needs of the community. So there's 1 nonprofit for every 303 Arizonans, which is kind of interesting. So a lot of organizations here. When you narrow down that number to the amount that actually have at least 1 paid employee or not, it's closer to about 2,900. And so what that tells us is that there are a lot of nonprofit organizations that actually rely 100% on volunteers. And that would be a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. Obviously, we're talking about the employment opportunities available to students coming out of your classrooms. But when you think about it, especially as you start to think about what kind of jobs, are in the nonprofit sector, a lot of folks immediately go direct to that social work or health and human services. There's pretty much every job that you would find in the for-profit sector in the nonprofit sector. This is just a graph that shows the types of organizations. So while there are definitely a lot of human services organizations, it's arts and culture, it's education, it's hospitals, all those things that you might not normally think being a charitable nonprofit, and even associations like the Alliance. We are a membership association, but we're also considered a nonprofit. So a wide variety. And inside each of those organizations, we need CEOs, we need CFOs, we need all the C's. But we also need those folks that are educators, that are social workers, that are artists. All those different kind of things make up a nonprofit sector. So there are plenty of opportunities and a wide variety of organizations that individuals can serve at. And when we start to think about the impact of those jobs in this community, we talk both about the direct impact. So our employees we employ, the wages we pay, the money we spend on supplies and with our vendors. And then there's the indirect effect as well. So if I am able to hire a marketing firm, then they're able to hire their employees and pay them, and they go spend that money in the community. So there's also that indirect impact that the nonprofit sector is responsible for. And this is what it looks like in Arizona. These are some shocking numbers when folks first see them. We employ about 171,000 Arizonans, and then indirectly the jobs that we're responsible on top of that is another 160,000. So the nonprofit sector is actually the 5th largest non-government employer in Arizona. We generate $8.3 billion in wages. So there's sometimes a misperception that, you work at a nonprofit, you're not getting paid, you're volunteered, and that yes, you can volunteer, but we also do pay competitive wages for our employees, and it is a great career opportunity. We generate revenue. So we're responsible for $10.9 billion ourselves. Revenue can include things like donations and fundraising, right? But we also have earned revenue. A lot of organizations, for example, membership dues, that's earned revenue for us. Events, it could be co-pays, it could be tickets to go see a show or to go to a museum. There's a lot of ways that nonprofits generate revenue even outside of fundraising. And then sometimes really shocking to think about the nonprofit sector and our contribution in taxes that we pay. So we pay $1.2 billion to Arizona state and local taxes. While some of us may be exempt from things like sales tax, all of us pay payroll taxes and other types of taxes that then generate obviously additional services for the state of Arizona. When you think about that in overall percentages, here's what we're responsible for here in the state. Nearly 12% of all jobs in Arizona are at a nonprofit. about 11% of wages, and 9% of those state and local taxes. So a really big percentage comes from the nonprofit sector. So like I mentioned before, when you narrow down that 22,000 number of nonprofits to those that employ at least one person, so we're just talking about a very small portion of these nonprofits, about 2,800 nonprofits. I like to talk about comparison because, you know, those numbers could just be kind of swirling around and we're not really sure, are they big, are they small? So when you think about it, we actually employ 37,000 more than Arizona construction industry, which is a huge industry for our state. And we actually pay more wages than construction, the wholesale trade, and accommodation and food services. So when you think about the amount of individuals that are interested in going into those trades, the nonprofit sector is right in there. So it's definitely a major driver for our economy, a major employer, and a lot of different variety. And so I'm going to put the link to this report. In fact, I'm not sure if everyone has access to the chat from the previous call. But I think you do. So you can scroll up and the report, I'm going to put it here again for you just so you don't have to kind of hunt for it. But you can actually download that report as a PDF. I'm going to throw that in the chat right here for you. And that way you could utilize that for your students too. If they wanted to dive deeper into some of that data or information, it's available to you and you can download those reports. So like I said, I just wanted to set the foundation for us to kind of understand what sector we're talking about here today, but I really want you to hear from my two amazing guests that I have with me today, Mesha and Myriah. They are both board members at the Alliance of Arizona Nonprofits and wonderful nonprofit leaders here in the state. So Mesha, I'm actually going to start with you if you'd like to introduce yourself and talk to us a little bit about how did you get where you were? You know, did you have a certain goal? Did you do certain education? Did you have a path that kind of led you other ways? And talk to us about your experience now being a leader in the nonprofit sector.
So all of that at once. Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for having me, Kristen, and I'm honored to talk to the group today. I just want to start with a little funny side note. When I was young, I always wanted to be a teacher. So I used to pretend I had a classroom in my bedroom, and my mom finally bought me a chalkboard, and I would pretend that I was teaching. I don't even remember what I was teaching, but I always wanted to be a teacher. So I don't know what happened and why I didn't go that route, but I do feel like I am a teacher every day in my role as CEO at Arizona Foundation for Women. So I guess to talk about how I got started, my friends and family say that they always describe me as different, and I don't know why, but that's what they always say about me. And I think when I think about it, I do sort of think I was different. And just to give you an example, when I was in college, I was not fortunate to get help with paying for college. So I decided that I was going to go part-time and I would work and pay for my college. Well, I got the first semester paid, I should say. I got a grant, a Pell Grant, and I wanted a job so bad. My mom would never let me work when I was in school because she wanted me to focus on school. And she said, there's going to be plenty of time for you to work, and trust me, you're going to thank me later. And so I do thank her now. But so I wanted to get a job. As soon as I graduated from high school, I was 18 and I was out of the house on the door. My mom couldn't tell me what to do, so I went and got a job. Well, after that December, Uncle Sam sent me a letter, said, oh, you're working? Well, you can pay for your own self to go to college. So instead of taking student loans, because I was just terrified of student loans from all the horrors that I heard, I decided to go part-time and get a part-time job. And that part-time job ended up into one job, and then I had a second job. So my day literally was, I take the earliest classes possible, which is not normal for most college students, especially as a freshman. I would take the earliest classes. I'd rush to my first job whenever I could get there. My job was flexible where I could come at 11 or 12 or 1 based on my class schedule. And then I would work there till 5. I had about a half-hour break to run to another job. So this was Monday through Friday. My second job was 5:30 to 10. And I say to myself to this day, I don't remember how I did homework or when I studied, but apparently I did because I graduated from college with great grades. But that was my life as a college student from freshman to senior year. And that took me 6 years, where all my friends graduated in 4 years, maybe 4.5. So what I did, I think that helped me get where I am, is the university offered so much resources and classes and things that were free. And so like resume writing skills, interview skills, management skills, all those things. And I would be a lot of times the only person that would show up on a Saturday morning for these classes. It got to the point where the office, the student affairs office, I would volunteer sometimes here and there, and they would just say, Mesha, you would love to do this, you would love to do that. And they would always ask me, why do you keep coming to this and you're the only one? I'm like, well, you keep offering it for free, so I'm gonna come. And I'm glad because I get all the undivided attention. So I think that was one thing, is just my drive to learn and wanting to do better. You know, I grew up as a really poor family. It was just my mom and I watched her struggle and things she did to make things better. So I always said I would have to live better than this. I just have to live better than this. And so I think that drive was part of it. And then to go a little further into my career, I had the opportunity to work at a bank. And I thought at that time, I changed my major 100 times, but I thought I wanted to be an accountant. And so I thought going to a bank would be a great place to maybe try to get a job and learn more about banking and accounting. And I did that while I was in school. That was my part-time job. And I would work half a day, and I learned everybody's job that was in our department, like everybody. So if they went on vacation, I was able to do my work and their work in half a day. And a couple of years go by, and our department started to really grow. And our boss at the time said, we had two bosses, but our bosses said, we need to hire someone else. We need a supervisor because one of the bosses is going to be traveling a little bit more and out of the office. And they didn't even open the position. I was 19 and they offered me the job. And because I knew how to do every single person's job. And at that time, it was long ago, I probably don't believe it, but I'm older than I probably look, but it was a long time ago, where it was when people had one job when they were hired, and that's all you were hired to do. You didn't do anything else. So if you went on vacation, that work sat there till you got back. And it was just a no-brainer for them because I had the desire to learn. They didn't want to learn anyone else's job. I never forget the women, I worked with all women, and every one of them said, I was hired to do this and that's all I'm getting paid to do. And I was 19, the next youngest person was 38. So there was a huge gap in our age. And so those women treated me so bad. They were my best friends. We worked great. They loved me. And when I got that job, they turned their backs on me, wouldn't talk to me, didn't invite me to things. It was like one of the hardest things I had to ever experience. But I got through it. I went to work every day with a smile. I killed them with kindness. And I slowly won them back because they did realize I was the right person for the job. And they respected me again, learned to love me. When I left, they would call me for baby showers and birthday parties and all that. So I think, again, it was my desire to learn and to go after learning without being asked to learn or asked to do it. I just said, hey, I can help. And then the last piece I'll just say, so I'm not taking up the whole time, is when I got a position after graduating that I felt really launched my career and my path into nonprofit. It was a joke of how I got to work for the YMCA in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I just told a friend that was leaving, I said, oh, if a job comes up, let me know. It's time for me to move on. And I ended up going there. But the story about that was I immediately got to a situation where I was told that everyone that had my position before me wouldn't last a year. Like the max a person had been there for the last 10 or so years was a year. And so when I was a marketing director, and every YMCA had their own marketing director, and we would come together as a group to talk about citywide campaigns, marketing ideas, and they would just ignore me. They literally would have their backs to me, never engage me in the conversation. And it was, again, a group of women. And I literally just sat there, but I observed, I watched, I listened. And then finally I started talking. And again, I had to make myself present and talk louder and get their attention and then finally I found out later, they thought I was just going to be like the last X amount of people who came to that position, didn't last a year. So why even get me engaged? Well, I ended up being with the YMCA for almost 13 years. And during that whole time, I jumped on every task force I could be on. Anytime there was a volunteer opportunity to learn something, our CEO at the time said, just because you work for a nonprofit, I want you to also go volunteer at nonprofits, get on boards, get on committees. So I did some of that work with my university, with the student services department. I went and volunteered on some of their committees, and I got involved. And that still stays within me, hence why I'm on the Alliance board, because I really feel that just because I'm in a nonprofit doesn't mean I shouldn't still give back into other nonprofits. So I think for me, it's the drive, the desire to learn, the desire to absorb as much as I can. And I believe all of that helped get me where I am today.
Thanks so much, Mesha. I appreciate that. It's really interesting because I actually can relate to a lot of what you just shared. You know, I think it's what I really appreciate about the time that I've been here in Phoenix, which has been pretty much my entire career, is that this community has such a wonderful cross-pollination of folks who have worked in for-profit, nonprofit, and government. And I think that's what makes us really strong as a community, because you may have those relationships that you created early on in your career for a specific job or specific role or sector, and you still have those relationships here, but all of you have moved different places, right? And so that's one thing we focus on at the Alliance, is that collaboration and relationships and communication between sectors and between jobs and roles is really important, because you may start out a certain place. I wanted to be an accountant too, and a CPA, and that was kind of my educational path. But when I moved to Phoenix, I decided to kind of go more a general degree route, because I thought, you know, there's so many other things I'm being exposed to. When I first started working for the Phoenix Chamber, I didn't even know what a chamber was. I was in my early 20s, and that's what I've fallen in love with, and then was able to shape my career. So I think one of the things is that if students, you know, I think when our parents maybe were growing up, it was very normal to say, I'm going to go work in this job, in this industry, and that's where they retired from. Nowadays, that doesn't happen really anymore. That's kind of a different reality. And so I think the students that you're teaching today will find themselves probably in multiple career paths. And so having that breadth of experience, relationships, contacts, and being open to, like Mesha said, I can totally relate, like learning every single thing. I've sat in every seat of an association, and now it makes you so much more diverse. It makes you so much kind of like the MacGyver or the Swiss Army knife. You can do a little bit of everything. So that's really great, Mesha, that you shared that. I love that. Myriah, would love to hear from you now. You can introduce yourself as well.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Myriah Mhoon. I'm the CEO of New Life Center. We are a domestic violence shelter in the West Valley, but we are also serving victims of sexual violence as well as human trafficking. I've been on a couple panels or many panels before, and the question of how you get started, I usually start at like the success point, but because we are talking with educators, I'm going to keep it real and kind of back up to my academic experience in school, and it wasn't good. I was not a successful student. I was naughty. I wasn't mean, but I was that child that was when you kind of add up who is the idea of success, I was in the bottom. Never did homework. I don't think I ever completed a full homework task assignment until college. I went to probably 6 schools. They put me in Quaker school, private school, public, Catholic. I finally landed in a Waldorf school. And my brain is a very artistic, movement-driven kind of brain. And so I'm always moving. And Waldorf not only was accommodating to kind of that movement attachment when it comes to learning, but it also gave me the capacity to thrive within a classroom with that kind of standardized academic norms. And so if my mother was here next to me, she would probably be laughing of like, we don't know how she got here, because we had very, very painful, hard experience with Myriah while she was a student. that did drive a little bit into my career as a college student. Again, I was a naughty high schooler. I think I dropped out my freshman year. I ended up homeschooling myself. And then everyone thought I was going to be in the arts, so that there was no need for college. And that pissed me off that they captured me in that box of you will not go to that traditional success because you've been a naughty student. And so to kind of poke the bear back at them, I don't even know if Google was around, but I remember researching colleges that did not accept SAT scores because, again, I was not the traditional learner. I did not thrive in testing environments. And so Prescott College came up. Prescott College is known as an environmental liberal arts school, a very expensive school. And if the young 18 Myriah was sitting next to me now, I would have whispered and said, just do community college for 2 years. You don't need to spend that much money in English 101, I promise you. But I did, I'm from Chicago. And so I kind of flippantly told my mom, I got accepted to the school. Do you want to drive with me? Otherwise, I'm out in a few months. And so she did want to drive with me. And so I did land at Prescott College. And again, like kind of Waldorf style learning, they were more accommodating for not only me not thriving within the classroom, but I did 1 year of their residential kind of traditional school. And then I went into their adult degree program where I was able to do independent study. So again, I could move, I didn't have to read textbooks. I could write about math instead of doing traditional math, which landed me in my first direct service capacity in the nonprofit sector, running Prescott's first homeless shelter for women and children. There was before many shelters for men, but there was not until PAWS came along a shelter for women and children. And I think back to that agency, which captured that community kind of stimulation that you need, that muscle that you need to build. PAWS was under a church 501c3. And so I had to develop kind of that skill of working with faith-based communities. Then I had to work with obviously that population, which they are amazing, wonderful women and moms. And then I had to deal with the community. It's very strange to me, but it wasn't to the community then that PAWS was only open for the winter time because it was cold up in Prescott. And so I then had to flex my muscle that, again, I didn't really know that I had, but to advocate within the community that I was in. And it was a small town, Prescott is small, to make sure that that shelter that we had opened was staying open for 12 months out of the year. And so I think to my mom's question of how she got here was that I did have the opportunity within school to start stimulating those specific muscles that launched me into being a fully capable CEO today. I did take a 11-year stint in doing direct service. I did policy work for a little bit at our statewide coalition to end sexual and domestic violence. And then I went to government where I was administering federal grants. So I think it was a whole wheel cycle that stemmed out of education that really made me, again, a competent leader in the nonprofit sector. A lot of people think that nonprofits are, you come with the hearts and your grassroots and everything's great and you want to help people. That does exist within, you know, direct service folks, but within that CEO capacity, when you are working in an agency that's as large as ours, it does mirror a little bit of the for-profit sector as far as the different tools that a leader has to have in order to be successful in the nonprofit sector.
Great. So you can get an idea, right? Two very different stories that landed these wonderful ladies at leadership positions in the nonprofits in Arizona. I just wanted to mention, feel free as we go through to ask any questions. You can put those in the chat box, or of course, you know, we're a small enough group that we can answer those questions as well. So we did have a question from Jane. Where can students find further resources if they are interested in careers in the nonprofit sector? I will let you guys answer, but I first wanted to share a resource that I showed in the previous call. So let me go ahead and pull that up for you. This is a great place. I send a lot of my young mentees who are wanting to find a career in the sector. We actually have a career center on our website. So just at arizonanonprofits.org, and it's Career Center here on the upper right-hand corner. And I shared something that we're super excited about that I don't even think I've shared with Mesha and Myriah yet. One of the things we feel is really important, not only in the nonprofit sector, but across sectors, is as it relates to equity, that all job postings have a salary range listed. And so we were successful finally in working with our partner that runs our Career Center, that all jobs posted here now have to include a salary range. So we're super excited about that. And so you can search by keyword, cause area. If we just click search, I'll kind of give you an idea. Literally everything from, you know, here's president and CEO of Ability 360, a very large human services organizations here in the Valley, and the salary range is listed. And so you've got all the different information about the type of education that they would need here, the minimum experience that they're looking for. And then you have everything, you know, then to a grants writer, right? A totally different level and type of desired position for an arts organization in Scottsdale. So this is a great place to go if you wanted your students to research the types of positions that might be of interest to them, what kind of skills they might need. I'm working with a high school junior right now, and I told her, go look, you know, because she was thinking that social work was the only way to get into nonprofit work. And she was very surprised to see things, you know, like a data analyst and compliance officer, right? Our organizations need all the different types of C-suite to direct service and everything in between that can be part of a nonprofit organization. So Jane, you can definitely check that out. But Myriah and Mesha, I would love to have you guys chime in as well.
I was just going to add that a lot of universities and community colleges are now offering nonprofit management courses, or just to even get into the nonprofit work. So there are a lot of schools that offer that, and I think a lot of people aren't aware of that. And then ASU, for example, has one. And there's a couple of sites like the Alliance that post nonprofit jobs. ASU Lodestar has nonprofit jobs listed. So it's a big industry. I mean, as you saw in Kristen's presentation earlier, how many jobs that we hold here in the state and how we stimulate the economy. So I think, you know, this is great that we have this opportunity, and I'm so proud that Kristen has put herself at these tables so that we can put the nonprofit out to the community, because people think of us when it's time for need or time when disasters happen, but we are here every single day, and there are so many jobs available from so many levels. We need IT people, we need accountants, we need program developers, or people who have like to work with kids or in the arts. So all those jobs that you're teaching or helping those skills teach kids, that's what we need. And I've had the fortune of watching kids go through the YMCA. We had various programs. We had a school. It was the first charter owned by a YMCA school in the country. And watching those kids become members and then become employees. And I will say, in my personal opinion, from the nonprofits that I've worked with, I've worked from very small. Right now, I'm at probably the smallest I've ever been. Where I started, it was just me. Now I have 4 staff, but I've worked for medium and internationally sized nonprofits. And I will tell you that you learn more than you ever will at a corporate job. You learn to be a cleaner, a janitor, a maintenance person. I mean, everybody ends up wearing multiple hats. And in my role, Kristen, you talked about, you know, nonprofits need CEOs, CFOs. Well, I'm the CFO, the CEO, the IT, the HR. So, you know, it really does give you a well-rounded skill set where, in my opinion, you know, sometimes corporations think if you go from a nonprofit trying to go into a corporation, they don't think you can do that. And I always say, I would love to see you come run a nonprofit with $10 and make it last all year. You know, of course, it's not more than $10, but there's no way you could do what I can do, and I could probably come in and help this corporation. So not that I'm going to a corporation, but I'm just saying that we bring so many skill sets, and you know, to tell students to look at nonprofits, because it does give you everything you need to know to, if they want to have their own business, it's the perfect place to go to get all of those skills.
Yeah, I want to jump on and kind of dive into Cynthia's question on the chat. I think there is a really long growing systemic myth that that there's no money in nonprofit, and that everyone is, again, the brick and mortar. We're counting our pennies. We're counting everything that we do. But in order, I think there's an issue within how we look at nonprofits of restricting how we want to give to that agency, and that does not support nonprofits being really systems within a community. Meaning, you know, we do have donors. We do have donors that want to restrict because they only want to give that backpack to that child without realizing that there's a whole system to support that backpack being given to that child. And so, yeah, I think I have been really open with, I make a nice living. I make a nice living, but I also comply with a lot of regulations, every best practice within nonprofit, to make sure that there's equity within my agency, and that, you know, there's no pocketing of the CEOs and pocketing money and not giving that backpack to that child. But in order to sustain, and again, we flex all of our muscles probably more than for profit, our turnover is large. There's a lack of CEOs that are ready to get into the sector, that are ready. So again, it's a high needs kind of position that gets paid well, and it gets paid well because it is so important. And my kind of pitch to my funders, not only my donors, but government funders, is restrict your funding, support those foundation structures to make agencies thrive, so that we can at any moment give that backpack. And not only when you are, you know, hosting that one annual drive, because you think that's the moment that you are truly needed. So it's kind of giving that that soapbox conversation of that we need you for the lifelong journey of this agency, and not just for that one moment and that one touch in that person's life.
And if I could add to that, you were talking about the myths. There's also the myth that nonprofits don't run like a business, and nonprofits absolutely run like a business, and it's crucial that we run like a business. We have a board of directors that are volunteer. The only difference is, you know, corporations have paid board members, ours are volunteers, and they oversee governance of the organization, make sure the money is going where it's supposed to be going, that we're balancing and we're going to survive. And we also, someone asked a question, Jane, you asked the question about students, should they volunteer at a nonprofit or seek internships? Absolutely. We rely on that, and that is a great growing opportunity and to get into the know. ASU, I just keep saying ASU, but all of the universities have you know, internship opportunities, and they don't always have to be paid. Some nonprofits, unfortunately, can't pay, but it's a great way to learn a skill set, or even just see if you're interested in it. But I think we have to remember that we are still a business, but it's got that more social, human need, and that mission is really to help people. And the other piece about that is we are mission driven, but we have to remind people, especially some board members who are very corporate, that our ROI isn't always the dollar sign. Our ROI is making someone's life change for the better, or saving someone's life, or helping someone find a home or get out of an unsafe situation. So our ROI, in my opinion, is even more lucrative and more special and important than a corporation's their shareholders' investments and getting their return. Our return is you just know you felt good. And so telling our stories of how your investment in the nonprofit was crucial as versus, and that's why I got out of corporate. I was in the banking world, and I got out because I just could not see myself working hard like that every day to fill someone else's pocket, which there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'd rather wake up every day working hard, saving lives or making someone do better. And so I think, you know, students, if they can just get into, and starting people young, even if they don't go work for a nonprofit, but to understand the importance of giving back and community service is another piece that I think we need to educate our youth at a very young age. I started, fortunately, at a young age in high school. I thought it was great because I get half day off, right, from school, but it actually ended up being the most rewarding thing I've ever done. So again, nonprofits, I can preach it all day long. I live it, I love it, I breathe it, bleed it. So I just remember us as you're talking to your students.
Yeah, you led us into the same direction we just went into the previous call, Cynthia probably remembers, and I'm going to include 2 links for you that we shared in the other call in the chat right now. One of them being the overhead myth letter. You've probably often heard, you know, 99 cents of every dollar is going right back into our programs, and there's this perception that if you spend more than 10%, 15, 20% of your dollars on what is considered overhead, and overhead is actually, you know, really important to the work that we do. We have to have technology that works. We have to have benefits for our employees, all these things. And Tori Taj, who's the CEO of Child Crisis Arizona, put it really well in the last call. She said, when she's asked about that, she says 100% of what you donate to this nonprofit goes to the mission and providing the services, whether that goes to the IT person, to the CEO, to someone who develops new opportunities or looks for new locations for shelters, all those kind of things. That's 100% of that dollar going to work, even though it might be on things that you don't think are. And I think, I don't know if it was Myriah or Mesha, the example of giving that backpack to that young person, all the things that are behind there made that exchange possible. So there's a wonderful letter that we point a lot of folks to that could be education for your students, and then a really great TED Talk from Dan Pallotta on, you know, the way we think about charity is wrong. I watch it a couple times a year just to remind myself of why this is such an important topic. So I included those links there for you. Cynthia had a great question. Do you see the nonprofit industry growing or shrinking in the future, or no change? That's a great question, Cynthia. I will just put my 2 cents in really quickly, is that I see it changing. There's a lot of conversation, even in the past 10 years, about, is the word nonprofit right? You know, should it be social profit? There's a lot of quasi nonprofit organizations. There's B Corps, where it's a for-profit, but they have a double bottom line with their mission. I see it changing and adapting, but I'll let Mesha and Myriah answer and provide their input too.
Oof. Oh, I'm not on mute. You heard that. I think, I feel like it will sustain how it always has. I do think that how nonprofits look will be different. I think we are in this impactful lull of change of power when it comes to who has been driving the nonprofit sector. There are people that are getting ready to retire. There has been not that much succession or thoughtful succession plan of how we are going to continue the lineage of nonprofit work, especially in human services and social services like myself. And so I am a proud millennial, and with, you know, the millennial mind, there are going to be pivots and change and different forms of innovation when we look at nonprofit that may change kind of the bird's eye view. But as far as the structure of specific to human services, like, we're not going, we haven't We haven't solved that mission statement. We haven't, or that vision statement. The vision is that big goal specific to domestic violence and sexual violence. So there is still a need. We sustain the same rates of fatalities of how many people we serve. So there's an ongoing need that I wouldn't in the near future imagine that nonprofits and specific to domestic violence and sexual violence work, it's not going to change, but I think it's going to look different. The social enterprise that we talked about, that's the thrift store. I actually have a thrift store that I took on when I started my position, and I am revamping what that thrift store looks like, because how we view social enterprise within a nonprofit sector, specifically thrifting, no longer works in our economic kind of global efforts of how we're really being impactful in those ways that we bring in money. I'm doing a lot of deep diving, and again, working hard, counting on my fingers to realize that, you know, you really have to have impactful social enterprises that are almost functioning as a high-powered machine and for profit to make an actual financial impact into that agency. And a lot of thrift stores, we know the goodwill myths and the issues, not myths, the realities of goodwill and some other thrift stores is they're really, the bottom line, does it really serve the agency or the mission and vision? So I, as my millennial brain is I'm doing a lot of work. Thrifting within New Life Center is going to look very different, because I do want to rise that bar as far as how we build social enterprises within the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Mesha.
Oh, I was going to say, I totally agree on everything you just said, Myriah. And I would add, I don't think it's we're going to always be here, because that's who we are. And we're, you know, organizations have leaders like are passionate and determined like we are. We're going to be here, and we want to be here, and we need to be here. I think that what might be changing, and you've probably all seen or heard this, is just like we're doing this right now virtually. A lot of work is happening virtually, where there's this in-home therapy, for example, instead of like person-to-person therapy. You know, COVID has really made things change. And I think COVID, although it's the worst thing that could happen, is that it also has made places, nonprofits and corporate, really look at how they are running their business and finding ways that, you know what, we can do things a lot better, and maybe in some cases for little or no money or a lot less. The other thing is fundraising. Right away, we were one of those organizations. We do a huge fundraising event every year in March, and our event literally was 3 days after our state declared no events over 10, and the president said that this is a global pandemic. And we literally, that was on a Friday, our event was on a Monday, and we had to figure out what we were going to do. And that's our largest income fundraising event. And for us not to be able to have that was, what do we do? So we had to pivot like everyone else, and we did a virtual thing. Of course, we didn't raise as much as we would have, because people like to be in the room. You're feeling the stories, you're seeing things right in front of you. But the reality is that we said we're going to still be here. We're still going to do it. People need to know the organizations, because we highlight a lot of the nonprofits in the community, and we want people to know, because guess what? This is the time when people need the nonprofits the most. And it's sad when you have people saying, oh, well, no one's going to give. Well, Kristen can attest to this. Giving was at an all-time high for Arizona Gives Day, for example, for other nonprofits, because people know in their heart that we all have to do this together. And so I think in our mental subconscious mind, we all know that nonprofits are needed. They need to be supported. And that was so evident from our Arizona state this year. I mean, I could have been prouder. I don't know how other states, Kristen, I don't know if you guys compared with other states that had it at the same time we did. I know some do theirs in the fall, but we have to be here, because this is when people need us right now. So, and if you all could help, put that kind of message out there, is that there are places for people, and we're here. So.
Yeah, I have a great pivot story due to COVID to share, and there's very few due to COVID of it has impacted nonprofits and especially human services. horrifically, but we do have a statewide contract where we train law enforcement on investigation of sexual assault survivors. So patrol officers, we're not talking about the advocates, we're talking about how the patrol officers deals and talks to that survivor, the detective tools. And so we were all over the state. We were about to go to Yuma. We had 60 law enforcement detectives registered coming all over, tribal, Border Patrol, Sheriff's Office, and then COVID hits. And so we were shifted off. The training was 2 days, and it's a huge state contract that we have. And so our pivot, again, of that need for innovation, for being on your toes, for just recreating on the spot, was that we went to webinar format like we're doing right now. And I never saw it, and I do see a lot of, I usually have a foresight of where we're going, and I never saw how that success was going to become. But what happened is that, and I saw it for myself, we had more people sign up. Instead of 2 days, it was a 2-hour training. And so we're having these mini webinars, and I literally saw patrol officers in their cars pulled over being able to receive that information. In rural jurisdictions, they don't have the capacity or the manpower to take 2 days off, even though we pay for it, to go sit in that training. And it just brought joy and emotion to my heart of, wow, like that was the true impact. And we were able to take that really rough spot that we're still in, the COVID era, and make it now this attainable 2-hour training for a patrol officer on the side of the road. So I do think, and I don't even know what answer I was questioning, but I think it was just the COVID of how, again, being on your toes, of dealing with pandemics. We're not going away. Do we need to shift everything? Have we shifted everything in the last 4 months? Absolutely. But I really, truly don't think that the need or the sustainability of the nonprofit sector is dwindling at all.
And I would add to that about, that's a great success story. It just made me think about how we're seeing more attendance on our webinar events, and we're getting further reach where people, one of the biggest barriers for women is transportation, especially if they have kids. And almost no matter what poverty level you are, most people these days have a phone, right? And so they have to have that phone, and so they can watch it from their digital devices. And it's so great to see the numbers and the reach where people who want to get services or programs can now get them without, if they can't take off work or they work evening and events in the evening. So it's been a good, coming from something bad, but thanks for that reminder.
Yeah, all great examples. And I think, Cynthia, you mentioned earlier in the chat about how students can be a part of the changes happening. And Mesha and Myriah, I think you both talked about, innovations in fundraising, but also in social enterprise. And one of the things we talk a lot to nonprofits about is the importance of having a diversified revenue stream. You oftentimes see nonprofits who have everything tied up in one government contract, right? That's one way nonprofits are funded. Or they have everything tied up in individual donors or one big donor. And the best thing for them to do is have a diversified revenue stream so that they're more sustainable. And I think one of the changes that we will see, especially in a post-COVID world, where donations might, be restricted, where Mesha's right, we had a great outpouring of donations in April for our statewide day of giving. Whether we'll see that trend continue or if it was an immediate kind of outpour based on the urgency of the need in the communities will remain to be seen. But the more nonprofits can shift and create for-profit arms or for-profit programs that, again, the money is being generated in a for-profit style. It looks and feels very for-profit, but it's coming back and funding the operation of the nonprofit in the community. We definitely need innovative minds. We need folks who can kind of have a foot in both worlds as the nonprofit sector changes, shifts, and responds to the needs in the community. So those types of brains, which we know are coming out of the classrooms, can definitely be put to use in the nonprofit sector as well. I know we've got about 8 minutes more, and I wanted to make sure if there was any burning questions that anyone had, about, I know, Mesha, you're now working for a smaller organization, but have worked for other organizations before. Myriah, I know that you're obviously an employer of many employees. Is there any specific positions or skill sets that you look for in your particular cause area that might be helpful for the teachers to hear about?
I'll say for me, it's social media. I am a social media dummy. I need that book that's, you know, social media for dummies. I really am not that at all. Like, that's not me. So we need people. For me, I look for, I learned this. I mean, you all have heard this, hire for your weakness. Well, that's exactly what I do. I look for people who can do the things I cannot, or that I don't care to do. I mean, you have to have a passion to do what you do. And it's not that I don't care about social media. I know how important it is, but I'm afraid when I type, when I hit that button, I just made a mistake and I can't get it back. So that's my fear that I have to overcome. And then the other thing I think for me is I'm really good at coming up with the idea. I'm a strategic thinker, but I'm not the greatest writer. So I'm always looking for someone with writing skills. I mean, I do okay, but I'm not that person. And to put a story together, I can talk about it, but someone else can more eloquently do that. So I need that. And then IT, I mean, now with technology changing, and how cool now that some of these, and maybe I'm just old and don't know this, but all of these things that I've been on, and you can do breakout sessions. I'm like, when did that happen? So, you know, technology is moving so fast, and definitely needing people with technology. For me, my number one need, from staff, from volunteers to board members, is people that love to ask for money and that are not afraid to ask for money. Because if you don't ask, you don't get. And so we really, really, really need that as well. So it's vital to nonprofits. And it doesn't always have to be money. It could be in-kind gifts. It could be a service, like someone has a skill set that they can come help the organization with, so they don't have to pay for that service. So it doesn't always have to be money, but just being able to make an ask.
What a great skill set, right? And that often is missing in nonprofits, and someone is just trying to make it happen, is marketing and communications. That's a really great one, because so much of what we do, if we're not telling the story and getting it out to the folks that can either help us or get engaged with us, then we can't do what we need to do. So great one, Mesha. Myriah, what about you?
All right, so I'm gonna get oovy groovy and all soft, but we truly need, and for my direct service team, and I have about 40 people now that do interact directly with our clients, is we need interpersonal skills. We need those persons that, you know, are deep thinkers and that can truly hold how they are and where they exist in the world. I have really worked really hard to take away that rescue mentality, that I want to work at New Life Center because I want to save someone. I want to rescue them. I want to give them empowerment. And we worked really, really, really hard. And a lot of people have not been able to get on the bandwagon of pulling back and holding space. And that takes a lot of power, of maturity, of realizing that you're not a savior. So there are those kids that want to, you know, help the puppy and help the children. We need thinkers also systemically in the world of domestic violence is a equity issue, is a system-based issue, is a community, is a race issue. And so those persons being able to have that full kind of picture before they go and hold that space. Instead of just getting again, we don't empower our clients, our clients empower themselves. So to have that restraint, again, is another muscle that we need our kiddos to kind of work on. And it's rooted in that kind of interpersonal skill that is lacking within some of our staff that we are hiring, that I'm seeing will need something that will need to be kind of carved out as an ongoing need.
Absolutely. Really great words, Myriah. Any other questions that were burning? Hopefully this is helpful. Like I said, I'm sure it's maybe not an industry that you've been exposed to or had involved in this project. So Cynthia, we really appreciate the inclusion of the sector, and you're right. This new normal we find ourselves in, and doing so many things virtually, I think has opened up a lot of opportunities, not only for projects like this, but for the nonprofit work we're doing. I know the restaurant industry could say the same thing. A lot of folks who never thought they could deliver in a different way are now realizing that, yes, we can. And sometimes you have to be forced into innovation. But nonetheless, I think it will actually, in the long run, once we can get past, obviously, the traumatic issues of COVID-19, I'm hopeful that we can hang on to some of these innovative practices that we have now been forced into and can actually improve our work going forward. So thank you all so much for being on the call. Thank you, Mesha and Myriah.
Can I just add one last thing? I just wanted to thank all the teachers, because what they're about to go into with the virtual classrooms, I know it's got to be hard. And but one of the things that I love about that I've been seeing on the news is the teaching up. There was one school who already started here, and the teacher said, the kids are teaching me because I couldn't tell one of the students how to go turn off their mute button, and I asked one of the other students to do it, and they did it. So I think this is a great opportunity for teachers too, but I know it's going to be tough, so hang in there. You know, it's all going to work out, but thank you for the work that you're doing too to bring us our next leaders.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Thank you, teachers. We appreciate you, and thank you for dealing with little me and the little me's in the classroom.
Thank you, everyone. I just want to say, Kristen and Myriah and Mesha, this has been great. And teachers, thank you for being here. CFA is also, you know, a nonprofit. So the work that we do, this experience is funded through the Office of the Governor, the Arizona Community Foundation, JP Morgan Chase, some other, you know, donor work that we have. And I'll just share that, you know, we think about being stewards of that money. So even this experience, you know, we thought about how does that align with our mission in our Pathways to Prosperity work? How are we impacting students? How are we impacting teachers? So I really appreciate kind of the deep dive and insight into nonprofits and how they work and how they think. And this was my CFA. I've been here for about 2.5 years. Had not worked for a nonprofit prior. I was I was a school principal. I had worked in industry for a long time. So I have learned a ton about nonprofits just in this experience. And what an opportunity for students who want to be creative, want to, you know, interested in communities, are interested in entrepreneurial, you know, ideas and their ability to really, you know, change some things in different ways than they would in corporate America, which is okay too, but we've got a wide variety of kids. So to be able to share opportunities with them is fantastic. So thank you all very much. I appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And teachers, I'll see you all tomorrow in our wrap-up session.
Thank you, everyone. This was great. Thank you. Bye.